So it was a learning lesson for me not to assume.
Follow your process and don't, unfollow that process for any reason.
I was also homeless at one point in time. I think that some elephants need to be playing in this lake over here. Because I'm good at painting doesn't mean that graphic design is also a strong suit of mine.
Finding the niche of what you want to do and who you want to do it for.
You have to bet on yourself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Design Discussions with Nadine. I am Nadine, and I am here with Amy Malkan, Amy Malkan Art.
Yes.
So we met at an event, a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I think your work is so interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring you to talk to me and show people your beautiful work and, get some more exposure for you.
I'm excited we finally got something on the schedule.
I know. We went back and forth a little bit, but, everybody's schedules are so crazy. These things happen. Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got into your business. I know you've been an artist your entire life, but how did you decide to just take the leap and say, you know what, I'm going to do this full time?
Yeah. So born and raised here in Houston, Texas. I grew up I'm the first generation here in America. So my parents are from India, Africa, born in Africa. They're Indian, then migrated here to America. And so, typical Indian family, education's important. And, the options are typically like doctor, accountant, lawyer, engineer. These are the professions, definitely not artist. And also back then, I'm 40 this year. So back then, 40 years ago, there wasn't a lot of case studies or examples of full-time artists. So, by the time I got to college and to say, hey, I want to pursue art and get a degree in art, that wasn't really an option for me. And, I'm still young and I'm not going to defy my parents. And what do I know? So went to college to Baylor University, got a full ride there, academic full ride, and realized I was not equipped to handle college life, flunked out fast. And then parents were disappointed. And then as typical Indian parents threatened me to go to a convent school. They're like, we're going to ship you off to India to a convent school to get your mind right. That didn't happen, thankfully. But I was just ready to get out in the real world. So I went to U of H to finish off my degree, and then I was doing sales, and I realized I was really good at it. And after I graduated, I was just doing a lot of corporate sales in different industries. And I don't know, I had a moment and I was like, this cannot be life where I'm making this money and making good money, but I didn't feel fulfilled. Like I'm making money and paying bills, making money, doing the happy hours, networking events. And I'm like, this cannot be the rest of my life. Like,
yeah, you didn't see the longevity and continuing to do that.
It didn't fulfill me because that's not even my purpose, And so there were some other life events that happened and I was like, I just need to get out of Houston. And somehow I landed in Australia. So I moved to Australia and parents were not happy. I was around 27 at the time and my parents are old fashioned. So they're like, my dad's like, you need to get married. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, marriage, I'm not anywhere close to that. Yeah. Lived there. I had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, but I learned a lot about myself. I didn't know anybody there. I worked there as well. And so when I came back, I just had this new,
fresh perspective, probably.
And just a new feeling. I made less money there, but I was living lavishly. I'm still a backpacker, so not lavishly, $1 million expenses and things like that, but
not worrying.
Yeah. That was the key. And that's their phrase. No worries, mate. That's what they say. And so I was like, how do I bring that feeling of the zest for life back home? And my friend had an extra ticket to go to Brendan Burchard. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's like the marketing guru, like Oprah, Tony Robbins, Ariana Huffington, they all go to him. And she had an extra ticket to his Expert Academy conference. And she was like, all you have to do is just pay for your flight. Everything else is paid for. And so I was like, cool, let's do it. And you've been to college, right? Yeah. So when you're in college, when you go to the library, even if you may not have the intentions to study, you just naturally want to study because it's just the energy in that field. The environment. And so at this conference, the environment is entrepreneurs at every level, ideation all the way to, hey, we're started like our 10th business. And it was over like 700 people there, 90 countries represented around the world. So you can imagine the environment in that hotel for a week. And that's where I birthed the idea of, I want to be an artist. And I also like personal development, and I want to marry those two concepts together. So I'm going to facilitate leadership training, but it's going to be in a tangible way with using art. And so when I came back, I was a waitress, and I started pursuing my company. I did all the steps, got the, legal documents, bank account, all the things. And then I was strategic in where I chose to waitress. I just didn't waitress because I needed a job and need money. I was like, I have to go towards my target demographic these are decision makers that I'm serving. These are people with disposable income to want to buy art, can afford art. And so I was strategic in that. And so I had to pitch myself actually to Carrabba's off of Kirby, because they don't just hire anyone like that without experience, A, and B, at that time, I think I was the second woman hired as a server. At that time, they didn't have many women servers. And I just told them, I said, hey, look, I'm a seller. You teach me the ropes on how to sell, and I'm going to sell. And we're going to have a good time, and I'm going to make money. You're going to make money. And if I don't do good in 2 weeks, you can let me go. Just put me on probation for 2 weeks. I was like, it doesn't cost you, and it won't cost you that much.
That's very smart.
And he was like, let's do it. And I definitely messed up the first day. But also on the first day, I had a big high. I think a guy left me like $300 for a lunch tip. So I was like, look, I'm doing something right. Okay. And I was there for a long time, on and off. And it was a great place. And I learned so much that was transferable to my business now, but sold a lot of paintings. And then that was like 2013. In 2016, I made the leap and went full time. I got introduced to a muralist and an artist, and we did a mural together. And that was my first time to get introduced to murals. And I was like, whoa, I love this. I love all the nuances. I like all the challenges that come with this.
There is challenges to that, because I can imagine, when you're just, when you're an artist and you're doing whatever art that you're doing, whether it's painting, sculpting, and you're in a studio or your own home, you're on your own time schedule.
Yes.
So I would imagine that being a muralist, it's a little bit more difficult because you're on location somewhere. You maybe have to work around, a business schedule, or
it's a lot.
Yeah,
I would say it's a lot more difficult.
That's a lot harder, I would say.
And so that's, long story short, that's how I started my business.
That's amazing.
In 2016.
And I, as you mentioned earlier, when you were talking about somebody left you a big tip and I'm doing something right, but you're a great conversationalist. So I have a feeling something has to do with that.
That too. Yeah. I was
Very
not afraid
personable.
talking to these people, where I felt like some waiters or waitresses were a little bit timid and they felt like they were less than because these were like big people. And I'm like, these are just people. They really just want to come and eat. And what I learned quickly, it's also profiling. If you understand psychology, these are decision makers. The last thing they want to do is make a decision on what to eat. They know that the food is going to be good. And if I tell them this is what you're going to eat, and I'm kind of like a little bossy, they're like, okay, yeah, you seem really confident about this. Yes, we'll eat this. And I'm like, and you're going to drink this wine. And yes, it's a $150 bottle, but you'll like it. It'll go really good with your food. They're like, yeah, sure, let's go for it. And, that also, if you don't know this, like in waitressing, that's also, you want to raise the ticket price. It's not necessarily ordering the most expensive thing, but, it was, for me, it was learning the wines. So if I knew what wines paired well with the food that they were eating, they're going to most likely order whatever that wine is. And if they like nice things, they'll order like but it was always like getting, it's like learning and then knowing to apply it. And then I learned about, it was like a mini business within the business.
Yeah.
So I had my regulars and I knew what they liked. I knew a little bit about their family. So when they walked in, I would be like, hey, Nadine, oh my God, that Chardonnay I was talking to you about, it just came in. Can I open a bottle for you? And you'd be like, oh my God, she remembered me.
Yeah,
and she knows that I like Chardonnay.
And who's going to say no to that?
No.
Nobody?
No. And that was one thing that Johnny had taught us, like make everyone feel welcome as if they're coming to their home, like to someone's home. And that was the thing. And we had like a little booklet that we kept and we wrote notes. So I knew, okay, Nadine is the one she's tall. She has blonde hair. She's an interior designer, has a podcast. So then say someone else saw you and they're like, oh my God, who was that? I was like, okay, that's Nadine. And they're like, okay, cool. And then, and it was like we were, and And that helped a lot. And that's how a lot of my business grew, because I had a lot of people like, well, what do you do? And then that's where I would pitch my business and be like, oh, I'm working on my own business. I'm an artist, and I sell paintings, or I don't know what my pitch was then. And I carried business cards. And this is the thing also, I had a lot of waiters that didn't like that I did that. But I had already asked permission from the managers to say, this is my intention. This is not going to be my end all be all to be a waiter. For some of them it was. This was their career, which is totally fine. Said, this is a stepping stone to the next step. Are you okay with me promoting my business? They're like, as long as you're doing it in a tasteful way, you're not like bombarding yourself or being forceful. I said, yeah, only if they ask me about me and what I'm doing, then I will mention it. But if they don't, I'm not going to assert myself in the conversation. And they're like, that's fine with us. That's totally fine. And so I did. So anytime they would, typically most people do ask, so are you in school?
Yeah. Making conversation.
They're making conversation. They want to know who's serving them. They want to trust you're taking the food from the window to here. They want to, it's a sort of a trust thing too. And so I used it as an opportunity to promote my business. And so I got clients from there who would be like, oh, I need a new painting for my office. Can you create this? Can you do this? And that's how that grew there.
Well, and the taking notes about somebody and being so thoughtful about, what they like and don't like, or, remembering names. All of those things are very important in business too.
Yes.
Being personable and getting to know somebody. So the fact that you were doing it there and then also,
I can't take credit for that idea. That was all Johnny Caraba teaching us to do that. But it was our, that's where I learned the CRM. That was a CRM software, what's the popular, it's like a popular CRM software that, I can't think of the name at this moment, but everyone uses it. But it's my CRM, in old school. Oh. Right? Okay. Because that's what a CRM is. I forgot what CRM stands for. Customer retention something. I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? CRM?
I do. Yeah.
So yeah, that's technically my CRM that I'm keeping tabs of everyone. And I definitely passed on when I left Caraba. I was like, who wants this? It's like valuable information because some of those people they're still coming there. I went there just recently and I ran into people that I served there, oh my God, it's like 20 years ago.
I was going to say, how long ago was that?
2013. Yeah. So 20 years ago. And those same people, I ran into a lot of same people there that still go there. So, and I still have a relationship with these people. Like these people's numbers are in my phone. So it was very fruitful. So when, if you're making moves of like, hey, I'm starting my business, I think there's a lot of information on social media where they feel it gives the impression that you have to make this deep dive. And I think they think that you have to make this big jump and it's a physical jump. And I think maybe more of it, I want to be clear that it is a mental jump. You can't go from quitting your job and then just going full-time in something. I don't believe that that's smart. You need to have money stacked up. That's an easy way that you're going to go back. And then what happens is you feel discouraged and you feel like you failed. When you didn't fail, you just didn't give yourself a fighting chance.
You didn't do it the right way.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Totally. So let's talk about some of your projects. You do personal paintings, you do for personal clients, you do for businesses, cities, murals. What is your favorite? What is your favorite thing to do? I mean, I know you're really into the murals. I mean, is that your favorite?
Yeah, murals are my favorite. It's, I realize I like painting big. I don't like painting too small. And I like it's sort of like waitressing. People will be like, don't you get bored every day? You're just waiting on people. But it's not. It's like every shift, you're dealing with different types of people. There's different challenges, different nuances. So it's like, it was like exciting every single time I showed up to a shift. I didn't know what to expect. What was going to happen today? So it wasn't mundane. And that's kind of how I see murals, is that it's, even though you're like painting, there's just so many different nuances. I'm dealing with different personality types, different requirements. Some clients may be really, really involved and some are like, we trust you. We don't really care. And this is what it is, and then whether it's an outdoor mural, indoor mural, and if outdoor obviously is going to have a lot more weather permitting, how hot it is, if it's rainy, windy. So yeah, I do like murals. I do see myself transitioning a little bit. There are some personal projects that I want to do, like painting wise. I really want to focus on like the diaspora of the people from India and how they migrate all over the world. And then the influence of all of that, especially all the historical influences that have happened when the British took over India and how that also influenced women's clothing, the religion. Like there's so many little things. And I just find it really interesting because I just found out I wear saris and we never wore blouses and saris until the British came. Oh. We took the saris and we just draped it around and covered ourselves. So just like these little things, I was like, wow, I would really like to do a deep dive history study and then turn that into an art piece. But yeah, how I make money in order to be able to fund that would be doing these murals and these commissions or painting commissions. And so, yeah, and I enjoy it because I get to work with different types of people.
And you do a lot of community work too.
I do. I enjoy community work because like before you and I got on camera right now, and I had shared that story about perfectionism, for personal development is still something I may not have the original idea of doing team building and doing leadership training may not have, that's not what my business actually stayed. It transitioned into this, but it still happens because I get to have these kind of conversations when we're on the wall painting, you know, when I'm overhearing the high school students talking or adults talking. You know, I just did one recently and the adult was like, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this. And I'm like, we don't honor self-talk like that here. You're doing it. Like who says you're doing it wrong? And to what are you comparing yourself with? So I still get to do that. And that's why I like doing the community-based artwork. And then it's also a win-win to the client because they're getting to meet the people that would be patroning their business and getting their name out there. It's good branding and marketing. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, I think that's great. So what would you say is your most proud moment as an artist, or what project are you the most proud of? I think you mentioned it was a recent one.
Yeah, I just did one recently with Covenant House. They just finished building a $55 million building here in Montrose. And if you're not familiar with Covenant House, it's an international organization and they help unhoused youth. And we have a lot of unhoused youth.
Unfortunately.
Either they're out of the foster system, they cannot go back to their families, whatever the situation may be, Covenant House is a safe space for them. And some of those unhoused youth also have children themselves. So I was actually, crazy story of how this happened. I met a gentleman on social media and he was like, I like your work. I like your energy. You're doing amazing. I was like, I like your work, you know, and you're doing amazing things for the youth and the community. And so then he invited me to teach one of his classes. He's an adjunct professor at Rice University. And he was like, I have a entrepreneurship class for the semester and I would like you to teach one of the classes. He's like, I think you're really good at sales. Can you teach? And I said, yeah, of course, let's do it. Did that, had a great time with the kids there. And he had a site visit with Covenant House the next day. He said, hey, I just left Covenant House and they said they're looking for artists and they're already interviewing, but would you be okay if I put your name in the mix and, you know, you talk to them? And I'm like, the answer is always yes. Yeah. You don't have to ask permission. And so I called the executive director the next day and she was like, yeah, we hit it off on the phone. She's like, come. And that's the most I've ever gone to speak to her. We spoke for over an hour and a half on the phone. And I have barely got to speak. She's a busy, busy lady. But I sat and she gave me a tour of the facility. And then she wanted a mural for the young parents room and then the nursery for the young parents. It's another lesson as an artist. So when I was talking and I was qualifying her and then getting an idea of budget, it came across as if the budget wasn't a lot. So I'm taking that into consideration, not saying that I wouldn't work with them, but just saying, okay, the budget's not that much. What can I give her so that we can still have a beautiful mural that fits in the client's budget? And so I said, I'll put a quote together. And I'm like, you know, does this number sound, you know, I'm trying to feel her in. She's like, it doesn't sound scary to me. That sounds just around what we're expecting. And so I was like, okay, well, let me put something together for you. I'll put a proposal together for you and a mood board. I never give a rendering before a deposit because that's work and time and effort and my idea. Just a note for you guys, artists or designers listening out there. But so I put a proposal together. And so when I was actually calculating the square footage and what she wanted, which was like a treehouse theme and a design and a jungle theme, I was like, it's going to require a little bit, but I can modify it. So I'm like, well, half of the wall, if I'm doing painting by square footage, if I do half, it's going to be this much. And if I do a full wall, it's double the amount. What I quoted her, what I was like guessing, I was like, how does this number feel, was the half wall. And I didn't know that at the time. I'm just getting her range.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm thinking she's most likely going to go for the half wall because that's the number she most likely feels comfortable with. She came back and said the board approved for the full project.
Wow.
For the full wall. So it was a learning lesson for me not to assume. And it was also a learning lesson to, I'm glad that it wasn't a learning lesson, but it was like a kudos to me, like, good you put it out there, because had you not even put it out there, you would have left money on the table.
And also has to do with, I'm sure, the value that they felt like you brought too.
Correct.
They probably looked at you and said, this girl is very talented, and, probably, the vibes that she got from you, whatever your conversation was, so they may have not anticipated on wanting to spend that much, but because, the conversation went so well and they feel like the value that you bring is so good that they went with it. They're
like, let's go for it. And they're so happy with it. What they did not know at the time when they hired me was that I was also homeless at one point in time. So there was another layered of nuance there and connection to coming to house. I was not unhoused during my youth. I was unhoused as an adult, but that was another thing. So another connection for me to Covenant House. And they didn't know that either. So so that project is special for me because in that one sense, it's special that I get to do something for the community. It's special that I trusted myself to put myself out there. I also did not give them an exact rendering because it wasn't flowing. Also, I think a lot of people don't realize just because I'm good at painting doesn't mean that graphic design is also a strong suit of mine. And it's not a strong suit of mine. And so trying to graphically put a design together that's saying, hey, this is exactly what I'll paint was very difficult for me. And so then I communicated with her. I said, I'm really sorry. I'm going to give you a design, but it's going to look choppy. It's not going to look good. And I just want you to see this is where my head is at, but I also want you to trust me that I'm going to deliver. And that you also have the right to say, hey, I don't like this. Can you change this? I am willing to work with you. And she said, okay, that's totally fine. And that's exactly, I'm literally just Bob Rossing it, being like, you know what? I think that some elephants need to be playing in this lake over here. I think that the zebra needs to look at this toucan.
On the fly.
On the fly. Yeah. I'm literally painting. I had no idea what's going on, which also made it then difficult for my assistant because I usually have everything laid out like a coloring book. And then he goes in and does like the first coat. And he's like, this is very difficult for me. I was like, I understand. I will pay you accordingly. I need you to trust me because ideally he wanted, and what we both would want is have the whole wall painted and then go back over and start laying in the design. Well, I didn't do it like that. I had to get it out of my head. And so I'm just drawing it and getting in there. And he's like, I was like, this is all greenery. And he's like, I know, but I don't know what to be.
Yeah, like you couldn't quite follow.
Yeah, I couldn't quite follow, and I couldn't quite follow because I'm like, I don't know how to communicate. It's just greenery. And so I said, I just need you to paint it all green. And he's like, I was like, Michael, don't ask. I know this is difficult. Don't ask me questions. Just do it for right now because I'm trying to figure it out too. So I can't give you a clear.
It worked out in the end. It worked out. The clients
great.
Happy with it.
They were extremely happy. And then I gave them an added value. I turned it into a scavenger hunt. So I said, I'm going to paint an insect or an animal. And that came on the fly. The idea, I was like, what if I paint an insect or an animal of every letter of the alphabet? And they're like, oh my God, we love this idea. And then I'm midway through and I'm like, what do I paint as N? And I don't have time to paint this and that. And I was like, oh my God, why did I commit to this? But it all worked out. I got it all done.
My question would be X.
I did an X-ray fish.
Okay, I was like,
and it's a tiny fish jumping out the
there's a couple letters.
Water.
There's a couple letters that popped out to me, especially that one. I'm like, what in the world would you do?
Well, I needed help at one point, and so then I got on Facebook Live, and I was like, stories, and I was like, y'all, I need some help. With these letters, these following letters. And then one of the guys from India that I know, he was like, he's really big into endangered species, and he was like, can you please include endangered species in the list? And I'm like, you're making my list more complicated, but I got it in for him. And I can't tell you what it is right now, the name, but it fit it fit one of my letters and it worked out perfect. So and it was a butterfly and it was a beautiful butterfly. So I was like, perfect. I got you're endangered and I got a letter of the alphabet.
Well, that pretty much answered my next question. Well, maybe you have more to add to this about, some of the challenges that you have as an artist, or what was your most challenging project?
Yeah.
Would that have been it? Or there's maybe another project that was more of a challenge?
There's others that are more of a challenge. Sometimes it's like, and every artist is different. Sometimes you may be intrigued creatively and the budget's not there. And then you have to decide of like, well, I just, go ahead and just give them this extra because it's like, this is just what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think part of it is, I'm in a mastermind group with 9 other artists that do this full time. And what I learned is subjective. It also is how we feel in the moment of like what's going on in our life and workload, and then how the client is treating us too, right? So if the client is like really cool and fun, it's like, oh, I'll give her extra. She's being so nice about it. But if the ones that are nickel and diming, you're like, nah, I'm sticking to the budget.
I think that is very common in lots of areas of business.
Yes.
Yes. You're going to get back what you give.
Correct.
Right? In a lot of ways. So I 100% agree with that. You're more inclined to give more and be more flexible with things when somebody's treating you nicely.
Just nicely and understanding and not nickel and diming your price. At the moment right now, I've had some really good clients. So like in this moment, do I remember like the exact challenge I faced? No, but do I know that I faced challenge all the time? Actually, no, I had one recently and it's been over a year and now the project's been postponed. And it taught me a lesson. Everything's always a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
She had called me up last year and said, well, it was one of her, tenants, because she owns a business that has other tenants within there. So one of the tenants knew me and said, hey, this lady's looking for a mural. She wants it done right away. And I rushed to go see her in Midtown and basically blew me off after that. Cause I always ask questions like, what's the deadline? What's the expectations? Part of me also should have, everything happens for a reason. It taught me, do not rush. I don't care how much the client says they need it the next day. You got to qualify them. And that's typically now with dealing with multiple clients that have done that to me, they have never been in a rush, A. Mm-hmm. It's just that's what they're feeling in this moment. That doesn't mean that that's accurate. We also have an established budget, which is a huge qualifier. Mm-hmm. And if they really want to see you, I charge a site visit now. If you really want to see me and you need me there, because some of this can be handled over email, over a phone call. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have me there personally. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm have to be more diligent about implementing a site visit. So not necessarily challenging in per se of a certain client, but challenging in the business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And these are things that I've learned. I did get away from charging site visits, and then I had another reminder. And it's not necessarily saying the client has to pay it, but then it kind of helps, it kind of qualifies the person. If they really want me there and they really want this mural, they're going to pay it because it goes towards the balance. Yeah. Or they'll be like, you know what? We're just kind of collecting information. We can have this over a phone call. We don't need you to be out there. So it's a win-win, right? Mm-hmm. And so these are just like different challenges. And that's how I see things. If it's a challenge, it's not like, why is this happening to me? My life's over. It's like, what can I learn and what can I do differently in my business so that I can mitigate that challenge happening again?
Yeah. And so that example would be, follow your process.
Yes, follow my process.
Follow your process and don't, unfollow that process for any reason.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Especially in the time when you're like, for me, it's always like when you feel like work is low and you're like, I really need a project. And that's when I notice that I abandoned my process. And you can't do that. And then also not abandoning my process for a friend. Those are the worst ones. Yeah. And so we always sign a contract no matter what. I don't care what the delay is or any client. That agreement has to be signed because it's a protection for both ends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've also learned that the hard way. So
I think we all have at some point.
I'm like, get a deposit and get a signed agreement. We're not doing anything before that.
Yeah.
So.
I think you've already given some pretty good advice already, but I was going to ask you what advice would you give to, aspiring artists that are trying to not only get into art, but, have a business for themselves? What advice would you give there? And I mentioned that my son, who's 14, is probably going to be headed in that direction. Mm-hmm. He too has been an artist his whole life, and he's kind of evolved, and he's very good at drawing. Drawing is his thing.
Mhm, mhm.
He tried painting, but so I think there might be a good mix there,
Yeah.
but sketching is his favorite thing to do. So what advice would you give to an aspiring artist
Yeah,
to get
I
going?
I think that first you have to believe in yourself, and it may not be like, I know I'm going to be successful, but you have to bet on yourself. It's also still an unprecedented um, industry. There's still not a lot of case studies that show the success rate and how it, what you need to do to get there. What I've learned from being a full-time artist and with other artists that do this full-time is that there's no right way of doing it. I think the common is that this is what I want to do, and there's confidence that this is what I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm going to make it successful. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know where it's going to lead me, but all I know is this is the type of life that I want to be living in. I think the other thing is understanding the amount of work that goes in it, because I think social media is not a true depiction of what is happening behind the scenes. Because I get also other artists that are like, oh, I want to do what you do and I want to, paint murals. And then that, before I used to accept free help in exchange for knowledge, which is, I'm never doing that again. That's bit me. But they get on the wall and they're complaining about the heat and they're complaining about this and that. And I'm like, it's not glitz and glam when I'm on the wall. It's tough, especially on hot summer days or cold days for up north people, windy days when I need to spray paint and it's not catching the wall because the wind is all over. I have to, or it's a rainy, drizzly day and I'm under a deadline. I have to communicate to the client. Like, I know you need this done, but I can't paint in the rain. So I think it's like, really, if you are interested, shadow people. Go and shadow their jobs and say, hey, I want to learn from you. I want to see if this is something that I want to pursue. Can I shadow you for the day or something like that? I also think that you have to really ask yourself, are you willing to put in the work? And this is just any industry, but are you willing to put in the work, knowing your skill sets? Maybe you're not a seller. So then, or you're not you don't like to communicate like that. You're not a people person, you're introvert, whatever it may be. Either you have to ask yourself, am I willing to learn for the growth of my business? Or do I need to source this out? And then I need to figure out funding to pay for someone to do that. To have to buy an agent or something like that, hire an agent. So you have to ask these questions for yourself, and I'm not saying you have to know everything, but there is a lot of work that happens for it to develop. But I think that once you make the choice to say, I want to do this full time, and you keep going for it and keep putting the momentum, eventually it's going to pick up full speed. So it's just do a little bit at a day at a time. The analogy that I use is that if you're driving in fog, you're not going to see your final destination, but your high beams will show you to the next part. And then you get to that part when you're driving, and the next part and the next part. So when you're an entrepreneur, you're driving in fog. You're like, I don't know.
Well, it's a lot of learning as you go.
Learning as you go.
Learning from mistakes, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Finding, the niche of what you want to do and who you want to do it for, what works and doesn't work.
Yes.
There's so many things that go into that entrepreneur mindset and having a successful business that a lot of people don't realize. You're not going to just jump in and be like, oh, everything's great.
Right. And I also say get a mentor. Yeah. And you don't have to get a mentor in your industry. You can get a mentor, just anyone, that's a successful entrepreneur. And because I like to learn from other industries. One of the things that I learned, that I implemented is lawyers. Like, how do they keep track of all the billable, like, how do they keep track of the labor that they're doing for all their clients? It's like billable hours. So then for me, it's like, okay, you talk to the client today, those are all billable hours. That you got to take that into consideration when you're giving a quote, because I think most people think you're quoting just for that, however long it's going to take you to paint. But there's so much work that happens on the front end, all the back and forth with the client, talking, site visits, the design work, all of that is work, is time out of your day.
Well, and I think a lot of people would assume that what you just said, that you're just charging for this.
Yeah.
But you're right. I'm assuming, there's a lot more that goes
so much that goes behind
before on the before end to get it to where it needs to be before the painting actually gets going.
That's like 5% of the whole process, all of that negotiations and stuff. And I think that's where a lot of artists like that I've experienced that have come to assist me to learn, end up having an ego saying, well, oh, this is so easy, I could do it. But they only see that part of it because I've hired them as an assistant to be on the wall with me. And I actually have had 2 gentlemen who have came back to me and apologized. And, and I can read energy and I'm highly intuitive. And so when they're like, I don't know if you knew this, and I'm just listening, they're like, I was jealous of you. I was envious. And I was like, no, I knew. That's why you didn't get hired back. I didn't want that energy at my wall. And I figured you would learn what it's like. And he was like, I said, how'd you do? How'd it go? He's like, I couldn't keep up with it. He was like, I didn't realize how hard it was to find clients and then to for us to go under contract.
Yeah.
It's like the hard part is it's like being a hunter, to go hunt for your meat. And then you got to secure the kill, and so if you don't know how to hunt and you don't know how to secure the kill, then what you going to paint?
Yeah.
So it was a learning lesson. And, when I share this story, they're like, did you hire him back? I'm like, heck no, because he already showed me. I wish him well. I told him if he ever needed advice or anything like that, but that's boundaries, and that chapter has closed for me to hire you as my assistant. But I do wish him well, and whatever he needs, like if I was any questions, I'm a resource for him. I want him to be successful. But it was also a validation, and for me, it's like I don't want anyone undermining what I do. They don't understand the hardships of this. And B, just like trusting my gut and intuition. Like I was like, this energy is not good energy. It's also it's a different style, right? If you're any other job, there's a level of hierarchy and it's noticeable on a physical, visible level. Boss sits up here and then I'm literally side by side painting and we're doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So then it's not very visible. And then you deal with like certain assistants that have egos. And then it's like sometimes, and it's different dynamic as a woman and a man. And sometimes I have to pull the card. Well, I'm the boss, and this is your job as my assistant. You got to wash the brushes.
Trust me. I mean, I'm a woman in construction. So
Yes,
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I have right now, and I'm not saying this to every male. I have a male assistant right now, and I've worked with him for 5 years, and he's amazing. The one I talked about earlier, saying it was hard. He's great. I don't have to deal with any ego with him whatsoever. So that it's been a perfect fit. But yeah, it's interesting. It has all different nuances as a woman in a creative industry. Yeah. With a lot of males that saturate that industry. And then the murals, and I'm in like construction, I'm using these tools, and they're like, when I order a scissor lift or a cherry picker or something, and they're like, you know how to drive this? Yes, sir. And then it's funny because like they'll try to figure it out. I'm like, no, this is what you got to do. It's fun. It's fun.
Is fun to be like, haha, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I know what I'm doing.
I had another artist on the call say she had a site visit. It's at a construction site. And it's these little things. She bought her own hard hat and her own vest. She wanted to show up prepared. It's just giving this illusion of like, I know what I'm doing. Don't second guess me. And it's these little things that as women, we have to do extra. That I guess a guy who had to go there probably wouldn't even think, let me go buy my own hard hat or whatever. I'll just borrow theirs. Because he doesn't have to prove anything.
Yeah, true.
It's these little things, nuances.
Yeah. So all along in your business, what would you say is the best advice you've ever gotten from somebody else?
Ooh.
Put you on the spot a little bit.
Ooh, yeah. That was, usually I have answers prepared. What is the best advice? I feel like I've always gotten good advice. If I was to kind of tweak it a little bit so I could answer it, I think there's a quote that always is like the best advice. Is the man in the arena. Have you heard that quote?
I haven't.
So I think it's by Thomas Jefferson. But it's the man in the arena. And basically he's saying that no matter what anybody out in the seats are saying about you, you're the man in the arena. You're the one fighting the fight. So they don't have a right to say anything about how you're doing it. And it's like, for me too, it's like, you just got to get out in the arena and go do it. That's the only way you're going to learn. I can sit here and do a lot of research and learning and this and that, but until I get out there and experience it, I won't really learn it. So my thing is just get out there and do it. It's okay. You're going to mess up. It's okay. You get dirty. It's okay. You'll fall. But at least, and then people may make fun of you, but at least you went out there and did it. They didn't even go out there and do it.
Like they say, you miss 100% of the opportunities you don't take.
Yes.
I just said that to somebody the other day about some things in our business related things that were, pivoting. And that's exactly, I always think about that. And it goes back to when you're starting something, it's the fear am I going to fail? Are people going to like this? Am I going to look like a dummy when I'm saying this or doing that? And that's a very hard thing for people. But if you just don't just jump in and just do it, you're never going to know. And then later on, you're going to also be like, what if I went back and did this?
Always.
So that's never a good thing. So
what if in retrospect?
Yeah,
no. Yeah, you can't do that because you were in a different time and space in your head, and what you know now is not, what you knew then is not what you know now. So it's definitely a wasted time and energy. But your passion of wanting to pursue something has to be far greater than the fear of failing. And so that's why I always encourage to figure out your why. Like, why do you want to do this? So like when there are moments where you're like down or defeated, or the fear has become too deafening in your head, your why is what keeps you going. Whatever that why is for you, it's like, that's why I got to deal with this. And it's not glitz and glam, like it's not, but the payoff is far greater. Like I was talking to somebody and I said, it's funny, I had a lot of my high school friends and even college friends who made fun of me or didn't support my journey and being an entrepreneur. But now looking back, I get to turn up at the Houstonian Spa drinking champagne on a Tuesday, and they're working their 9 to 5, on their computer cubicle saying, oh, when's Friday or coming around? I don't ask for Friday.
Yeah, right.
And I actually love Mondays. I enjoy Mondays. I'm like, oh, it's Monday. It's a brand new week. What are we going to do this week? Let's go. Like, I'm so excited. And people are like, oh, that's so, and I'm like, you're just not happy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take that on. I'm happy, but I worked hard on the front end. So while a lot of my 20, 30-year-old friends were out partying and doing stuff, I'm like, nope, I got to stay at home. I got to build my website. I got to put my graphics together. I got to do my business card, all these. I got to go to networking events. I have one friend and she keeps reiterating this to me. And I'm like, I got it. I love you too. She basically was saying, I judged you. She was like, I just didn't understand. You were always out and about and you were doing this and you didn't have time for this and this and this. And I'm like, oh my God, Amy just needs to relax. She's doing too much. And now she started her own business 2 years ago and she's doing the same thing. She's getting her name out there. She's networking. She's like, this is exhausting. She was like, I didn't realize how much work this was going to be. And I said, thank you. Thank you. I was like, so I don't think people really understand until you're in the arena.
Yeah. And getting back to, you said about the people working 9 to 5. I just feel like life is too short to not do what you love to do.
Yeah. And I'm also not dissing 9 to 5. If that's what you love, do it. Yeah,
but I mean, I also teach that to my kids too. And that's why I will never force my kids in a direction. Because, and I think even when they were younger, I was always thinking, oh, I would want them to do this or do that or go to this college or that college. But then as they've gotten a little older and I've learned some things about myself and about life, my mentality on those things have changed. And I'm like, I want them to be happy with whatever they're doing. As long as they can sustain themselves.
Correct.
I mean, I want them to have a successful career, but I don't want to push them into any specific direction.
No, you can't because, and this is what I was telling my neighbor this, we have really great conversations. I'm like, I don't own my child. I am just his guide in this earthly world on what to do on earth. Thereafter, he has his own purpose and his own life to live. And all I can do is be a safe space and help him.
I'll give advice.
I'll give advice and that's it. But other than that, I have to allow him to make mistakes and I have to allow him to find himself and figure things out because that's how I learned about myself. And you're only prolonging it. So as much as like my parents were controlling, but through a loving way, they prolonged that process. And it's not a coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's just, this is just the nature of the beast. And this was my story. But, if we were playing hypotheticals, had they allowed me to find myself, who knows, maybe something else different would have happened.
And a lot of those things culturally, that's how it is. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
You expected your parents to be like that. They were like, their parents were like that. And that's, how it
was the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nobody looked at those things as being something strange because,
No, not until you get into you're a parent yourself and you're like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Me and my parents have had some really good enlightening conversations, but same like you, I want my son to be happy and to, pursue whatever he wants to pursue that makes sense. So I don't also like asking questions like, so what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, because I haven't grown up. I get to be like, I get to continue coloring on walls.
Yeah.
That's
great. That's a beautiful life. I love it.
Yeah, just be childlike. It's a child. A child is full of curiosity.
Yeah.
And they're always learning something. And they're like, oh, well, what about this? And what about this? And I feel like that's how we need to be at life at all times. be curious, ask questions, learn new
Yeah,
things.
keep learning and growing.
Yeah, because we really don't know everything. We haven't experienced everything. We just don't know.
Yeah.
And I have no problem telling that to my son and say, I don't know. Let's look this up together. I don't know. He asked me this morning. I was like, do you know what it means to be double jointed? In the moment, I've heard the word and I know, but I couldn't. My brain wasn't working.
You couldn't
that fast.
describe.
No, and I said, I know, but I don't know. We have to look it up. He was like, yeah, because my friend said he could just like move differently or something. And then I was like, oh yeah, double jointed. I said, yeah, so you can move your arm in a whole circle, like in a, and he was like, oh, okay. So, but it was like a collective figuring out what that word meant. But I grew up where my parents knew everything. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're disseminating false information because that's not accurate information.
Yeah.
So, and we can keep talking about all of that stuff too. Yeah.
I love that. Well, this was a wonderful conversation.
This was. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
I'm so happy to have gotten to know you better. This is great. And I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation. Until then, stay tuned for the next episode.